Okay, firstly, did that shadow extraction just talk? Like the resurrected Ant King? Is my eyes deceiving me? Did that just happen? Because if so, that is something entirely different that we have not seen before, obviously, and really just makes you wonder what potentially could happen next thanks to that little dialogue. So, let me explain. If that Ant King just straight up talked, that means that these shadow extractions definitely will eventually, or maybe just this ant in general, will potentially have a will of its own, which is kind of scary, because think about this. These shadow extractions are brought back from death itself after Jin kills them. Obviously, if they're able to have their memories and emotions from the past, then that would mean that they could harbor some vengeance towards him and want to bring him down, which is absolutely scary. So because of that little factor, it does make me wonder, because the final dialogue from the ant before it actually perished, it said that it wanted to be king. It should have been king. It was constantly complaining, basically, and then it died, and it knew it had to run. It tried to run, and Jin, killed it. But it's the point, though, is that if the ant can actually speak, that's actually quite dangerous. That's dangerous, in fact, to where I don't even think Jin, even if the Shadow Soldier's strong, should keep it around. And I know many will say, but he could just cancel it. He has the ability just to cancel extraction. That may be the case, but the question, though, is if it can gain its own will, can it eventually gain its own power to even surpass Jin and be an actual threat? Which that gets into the next point I want to get at. So, it's already been revealed, in this chapter and the previous chapters, that the Ant King is able to gain power from devouring other creatures. So, we all know that when Jin resurrects something, it does gain power, gains EXP. But on top of that, though, we do know that they retain their old abilities. That would mean that this creature would be able to level up indefinitely like Jin, but also would be able to level up by devouring other creatures. So, that's scary, because that would mean that this creature will always be probably one of Jin's strongest soldiers, and on top of that, it seems like it has sentience. And if so, that's dangerous. I really, really don't think it is wise to keep something like that around, personally, but I could be wrong. So, okay, anyways, let's get right into it. I love the design of the Ant King's resurrected form. It is absolutely breathtaking. Like, I love the design. Easily one of my favorite designs of all the shadow extractions, which I think it would be a waste to get rid of him, at least for the time being, but it just, like, holy crap, the design looks really awesome. It really gives already a nice designed, like, villain, or the Ant King already that had a nice design, an even better design, even more intimidating design, because of just the way the shadows are wrapped around him. I love the way it looks. But, this gets into the big question as well. What was that darkness that surrounded Jin when he tried to resurrect it? That's a question I have, because this is the first time I think we've ever experienced that. Is it because that he's getting so strong now that his abilities have reached a realm to where he's able to dive dark, like into the dark abyss to pull things out? Or was it because the creature's strength was just so overwhelmingly powerful that it's just different? It's very different from the previous shadow extractions, which, by the way, I want to point out, it said that the Ant King was a general, which is not something that we have seen thus far from everything that Jin has, brought back to life, unless I'm wrong. So if that is the case, that means that this ant is on a whole other level that we have not seen before, which means that maybe his rank general could necessarily be the case of why he's able to talk or have sentience. So that means that eventually all of the shadow soldiers that Jin has might be able to, become that rank. So that's kind of interesting. I'm really curious if Iron or, someone like, let's say Tusk, etc. could eventually become a general. And that would be really cool if we get to actually see them talk. And if that's the case, I wonder what Iron would say. Would Iron be his old personality, or would he have more of a respectable demeanor towards him when it comes to Jin? There's so many questions I have. So, okay, backing up for a second, I want to talk about what these two chapters I read actually did, and and kind of where the story potentially can go next. So obviously the ant arc is done. Jin has officially wiped out all the ants on the island. He has killed the Ant King, he killed off the stragglers, he killed off the nest. The only thing that's really left for Jin to do now is pretty much resurrect the dead bodies and make it into his minions. The question I do wonder is if he's going to do this to the Ant Queen as well. That's a big question I have, which I want to talk about. So the Ant Queen. We know that she was a boss monster that died, and we do know that Jin is capable of resurrecting bosses. I wonder what would necessarily happen if Jin was to resurrect the Ant Queen. Because when you think about it, the Ant Queen was able to create more. And if she hypothetically retains that ability, which she would, according to everything we've seen thus far from the story, if she created more of her kind, would they directly follow underneath Jin? Or would they not be a servant to Jin, and they would just be a servant to the Ant Queen? There's so many questions I have about that. But at the very least, though, I wonder if Jin is actually even going to try to resurrect the Ant Queen or not. I mean, so many questions about that one. Another thing, too, is the human that Jin resurrected to heal one of our main characters of this story. And it was something very different that we haven't actually seen previously from anything that Jin has done. So Jin actually resurrects a human. Now, he's done this, obviously, in the past. He's resurrected one that went against him, which is now Iron. We know about this already. But he's never really resurrected any other human since then. And he resurrected the healer that was a part of the S-rank hunters and had him use his power to heal, individuals. And as soon as he does this, he actually makes it to where he disappears. He cancels extraction, he goes back to wherever he came from, the afterlife, etc. But, upon doing this, though, Jin actually struggled to bring the man back. That is kind of interesting to me. The man's will was so strong, in fact, that he was able to actually deny Jin multiple times where he couldn't be resurrected. I mean, Jin eventually did win in the end, but he still was able to deny him 2 times in a row, which is kind of saying a lot, honestly. So, will does have a lot to factor in. Like, if you really don't have the will to come back or the will to fight anymore, it could definitely stop Jin probably from resurrecting you. So I can't imagine some higher level enemies that Jin faces that just don't want to come back or have a stronger will won't ever. So it's cool stuff. We're getting a lot of details to Jin's shadow extraction in these 2 chapters, which I appreciate greatly. Which, by the way, let's talk about the Ant King. Since technically we know that he consumes others, etc., and gains their power, does this necessarily mean that he has the healer's healing power? And if so, that would mean that Jin has a healer now, a part of his group, which is incredibly important because Jin now no longer needs to really rely on potions. He doesn't need to rely on, let's say, level ups, etc., to fix his health back to 100%. He can actually use his ant to be able to heal him. So if that is the case, that's pretty cool. That is definitely a major boost in his power, because now he has a healer, he has a tank, he has damage dealers, he has spellcasters, buffers, etc. So he has it all now, finally, after all of this time. So, another thing is we have America kind of starting to poke their nose into what Jin just did, which kind of makes sense. We know that the Americans recruited one of the other S ranks in the past when it came to Korea, and they took one away, and obviously they would have their sights set on Jin after all of this time, because Jin just proved himself to clearing an S rank dungeon, or dungeon break, which is saying a lot, because all the S ranks from both sides, Korea and also Japan, weren't able to do much at all. So if it really wasn't for Jin, everybody would have wiped then and there, and then the Ant King would have potentially went over to Korea or Japan, and we know where that would have went. That would have been very bad. So it's clear why the United States wants Jin. The question is, will Jin join them? Personally, that's an interesting one. It's up for debate, because I don't think Jin would leave his country, personally, because of his family, but we also gotta factor in what type of personality Jin has. He's always someone that is seeking to level up, get stronger, etc., see his limits, and I wonder, because of America wanting to recruit him, it would mean that he would have more opportunity to, attack higher rank gates, S rank gates, etc. I could definitely see him being interested in going to America just for that reason alone, and if so, it does make me wonder, will he join them and not fully join them? I mean, obviously, he could work both sides, because, I mean, he does have his ability to kind of teleport between shadows, so even if, let's say, he worked with, you know, America, he could still be back in Korea in literally like an hour or two after his cooldown, so it's not necessarily like he can only focus on one or the other, and he also can spread out his shadows to defend other areas when he is not there, and obviously, since he has the Ant King now, he doesn't necessarily need to worry anymore, because if the Ant King truly is loyal and isn't going to turn against him, that Ant King alone is going to be able to wipe out so many people by himself, even S ranks. Like, nobody's really going to be able to touch him because of how strong he is, so yeah. But, anything else to really kind of talk about? I don't really think so. I think I kind of covered everything that needed to be discussed. If I forgot anything, please remind me in the comments below, and I am sorry if I did. But, I want you all to have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.